In this video, I'm going to show a brief look at the rich navigation service that we're building, which enhances the in-editor PR experience by allowing you to efficiently review pull requests, but without needing to check out any branches or install platform SDKs or language extensions in order to do it. So here, I have open a very simple React.js based web application. And as you'll notice on the left, I have the GitHub pull request extension installed, which is enumerating for me the pull requests that are associated with this repository. Now I've also installed the extension for the rich code navigation service. And if I begin to open up files that were changed as part of this PR, I'll be able to demonstrate how the experience of reviewing this PR has been enhanced by the cloud. So first, if I start to hover over variables within a file, you'll notice that as I expect within Visual Studio Code, I get hover information and documentation, for example, on this component called emoji. But if I right-click and say peak definition, we'll notice that the file that contains this component is actually not even located within this pull request. It is emoji.js. But I'm able to still hover over it and peek at the definition of this component all the more so. And if we look at the path of this file, you'll see that it says github.com, which is indicating that the rich code navigation service actually pulled the contents of this file dynamically from GitHub in order to serve the request that we made to peek its definition. Now, beyond hover and being able to peek definition, the other thing that's interesting about the rich code navigation service is its ability to provide diagnostics information on PRs. So you'll notice if I open up the problems panel, we'll see that we can immediately notice an ESLint violation where the bonus label argument is assigned but never used, which is this right here. Now, what's interesting even more so about this is if I switch to the extensions tab, you'll notice that I don't even have the ESLint extension installed, but yet I'm still getting ESLint errors. And once again, that's because the rich code navigation service is actually powering those diagnostics information for me, which is allowing me to maybe focus my review or catch issues that I wouldn't otherwise have spotted. Now, going even further, imagine if you wanted to understand whether any consumer of this grid legend component even specifies arguments at all, because we know that bonus label isn't used, but in the grand scheme of the entire repository, does anyone pass properties to this component or not? So to answer that, we can simply right-click the grid legend and do a peek references this time. And the rich code navigation service is going to span the entire repository and find references of this component within this file, but also within other files, even if they weren't even changed as part of this PR. So for example, we can see here in guestbookgrid.js that in fact the grid legend component is used, but no props are ever specified to it. And so with this information, we could then add a comment to the PR saying that this change doesn't really seem to make any sense or have enough impact on the code base to really allow it to go in. Now, beyond changes to files within the PR and then changes to files within the repository that were not changed as part of the PR, the rich code navigation service also allows you to do navigations to external repositories. So in this case, you'll notice that this change introduced a dependency on the MobX library's observable function. And if I was interested in understanding more about what this function does, I could once again hover over it, but furthermore, I could right-click and do a go-to definition. And by means of the rich code navigation service, it actually navigates me not to the d.ts file for the MobX library or the JavaScript file that it built and distributed by means of its npm package, but it actually navigated me to the original TypeScript source of the MobX library in its open source GitHub repository. Now, once I've navigated outside of my sample application and into MobX, I can also continue to then navigate within MobX. So for example, if I right-click the observable function and peek references, I can then go and look at where within MobX this is actually referred. And so here, if I jump all the way to the mobx.ts file, you can see here that in fact we are navigating around the MobX repository. Now, the rich code navigation service isn't limited to just JavaScript and TypeScript. In fact, we're also supporting C++ as well. And so here you'll see I have another sample project open, illustrating once again that I do not have the C++ extension installed, and therefore I have no local language services powering my ability to navigate a PR. But if I switch to the pull request tab, select a file that was changed, and begin hovering over variables, you'll see that I'm getting the hover information that I expect. And then furthermore, if I right click on this user counter's type definition and say go to definition, it's going to jump me to the header file where that is located. Once again, not having any C++ language extensions even installed. Additionally, we can demonstrate the exact same experience but with a C# project. So in this case, you'll notice once again, I do not have the C# extension installed, but if I switch to the pull request tab and begin opening up files that were changed as part of a PR, I can hover over function definitions to see their type definition, and then I can even do a find all references on them in order to understand where in this repository or this PR they've been referenced. Now furthermore, we also have support for the Rich Navigation service in Visual Studio. And so here I'm using the GitHub for Visual Studio extension installed, and I've got the same PR for that React.js based web application that you saw earlier. And if I select the grid legend file, you'll immediately notice that I see an error squiggle over bonus label giving me the same ESLint error that we saw earlier. Once again, if I then right click on grid legend and say find all references, it's going to provide for me the list of references of all the files within the repository that use this grid legend component. And then just like we saw with the MobX dependency in Visual Studio Code, I can also do external repository navigations within Visual Studio as well. So for example, if I right click the observable and say go to definition, that's going to jump me into the observable.ts file within the MobX repository. So this is just a first look at the Rich Code Navigation service. We're very excited to start to get feedback from folks, hear interest, and start to have an open conversation with the community about the value of this experience and where we should take it further. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much.